Today's speaker is Dr. Ansuman Das. He is currently an assistant professor in the Department of Mathematics, Presidency University now, Kolkata. He has completed his PhD in cryptography from University of Calcutta. His research areas are algebraic graph theory and domination in graphs. He has 35 international publications in the areas of cryptography and graph theory with Erdős number 2. With immense pleasure, I welcome you, sir, to start your presentation.
Okay, so first of all, I thank the organizers for inviting me for this lecture. And I'm also really enjoying this lecture series as a whole. So today I'm going to talk about a particular type of graph which is defined on group, which we call a comaximal subgroup graph of a group. So I would like to dedicate this lecture to Professor Laszlo Lovers, the this year's joint Abel laureate. And I would like to urge all of you to have a look at one of his articles, One Mathematics, which I have recently gone through, and it inspired me a lot. So with that, I start the lecture. So mainly the graphs that we have seen so far in this lecture series are graphs like power graphs, enhanced power graphs, commuting graphs, generating graphs. And in the coming weeks, we'll also see some lectures on Cayley graphs. So if we try to put all of this graph within one bracket, so these are mainly graphs which are defined on groups where the set of vertices of all these graphs are either the group elements, the entire set of group elements, or some suitable subsets of them. On the other hand, we may have another type of graphs where, they are also defined on groups, but there the vertices are non-trivial proper subgroups of the group. So like we have intersection graph of group, and in this lecture we'll be mainly focusing on comaximal subgroup graph of a group. So this was introduced by Akbari and others in 2017. The definition of the graph goes like this. That is, if we take a group G and let S be the collection of all non-trivial proper subgroups of G, then the comaximal subgroup graph gamma G of the group G is a graph whose vertex set is S and two distinct vertex or two distinct subgroups H and K are adjacent if we have Hk equal to G, where Hk is just the set theoretic product of these two subgroups. Well, so we just need to observe a few things here, that as the definition goes, it allows the group to be an infinite group also. However, in our case, in this lecture, we will be talking mainly about finite groups. The case when G is finite. Also, another thing which is to be observed is that if Hk is G, then we also have Kh equal to G. So that means this graph that we are getting is an undirected graph. Okay. So we start with some examples. So suppose we take the Kleins 4 group K4. So there we know there are three proper subgroups of that group. So we call them H1, H2 and H3. And we can easily check that any two of them are adjacent in gamma G. So we get a complete graph on three vertices, which is given in figure A. Similarly, if we take the group S3, then there we have three subgroups of order 2 and one subgroup, the alternating group of order 3. So there we'll see that H4 is the alternating group and H1, H2, H3 are the three subgroups of order 2. So all of H1, H2 and H3 will be adjacent to H4 and H4 is adjacent to all of them. So that's what we get as gamma S3. So these two are two examples where gamma G is a connected graph. But in general, this gamma G is not always connected. So let's see some examples of disconnected gamma Gs. So suppose if we take the quaternion group Q8 or the dihedral group D4 of order 8. So in case of Q8, we have, four subgroups H1, H2, H3, H4 as it is mentioned above. So there we'll see that H1 is an isolated vertex and H2, H3, H4, they form a complete subgraph of gamma G. In the same way, in case of D4, we have 8 subgroups, out of which one is an isolated vertex and the other vertices are all adjacent to that universal vertex except that isolated vertex, which is T1. So these are two examples of disconnected comaximal subgroup graph. Okay. Now, the first thing that comes in our mind is that when it is connected. Yes?
Sorry for intervention. T1 is not isolated here.
Yes?
Sorry. T1, is it isolated?
No, T1 is not isolated. I'm saying that T1 is adjacent to every other vertex apart from H1.
Universal vertex.
Yeah, okay. Universal apart from H1. Okay. So, as we have seen some connected examples as well as some disconnected examples, so the next thing which comes in our mind is that when will be the graph a connected one? So that has been done by Akbari and others, that they have shown that for a finite group, the following are equivalent. That is, the graph is connected. The graph gamma G is connected if and only if it has no isolated vertex, if and only if the diameter is less than equal to 3. And the last condition is a important one, if and only if the group G is a super solvable groups and all of its silo subgroups are elementary abelian. Well, obviously, if the graph is connected, it has no isolated vertex. But what is important is that in this case, if it has no isolated vertex, it has to be connected. Now, that is an important result. It's a useful result in the sense that means that you cannot have gamma G, say for example, as a disjoint union of say K2 and K3. So means either it has, if it has no isolated vertex, it has to be a connected graph. Okay. So that now, what we see from this, this theorem is that is the isolated, vertices will be playing an important role. When we'll be having an isolated vertex. So if we can figure that out, then we'll know when it is connected and when it is not. Okay. So for that, we need a definition first. That is, we call the Fratini subgroup of a group G, which we denote by phi G as the intersection of all of its maximal subgroups. Now, in general, a group G may not have any maximal subgroup at all. Say, for example, like the group Q plus. But as we are dealing here with only finite groups, so it will always be having maximal subgroups. And if we take all of the intersection, we get this group phi G. Now, what we have proved is as follows. That is, if G is a finite group and if phi G is non-trivial, then gamma G has an isolated vertex. In fact, phi G itself and all proper subgroups of phi G will be isolated vertices in gamma G. But the main interesting part is the converse part. That is, if the graph gamma G has an isolated vertex, then can we say something about the group? Well, in general, we cannot say anything till now. But what we have shown is that if G is nilpotent, then if gamma G has an isolated vertex, then the Fratini subgroup of G has to be the identity subgroup. Okay. But this condition that G is nilpotent is important here. That we'll see with the following examples. So first of all, if we take the group A4, then we know that A4 is not a nilpotent group, but phi of A4 is a trivial group. But if we draw gamma A4, we'll see that it is the disjoint union of a star and 3 isolated vertices. So that means A4 is a solvable group. So for solvable groups, existence of isolated vertex does not imply that phi g will be non-trivial. Even if we take the condition to be slightly stronger, that is, if we take the group to be a super solvable group, still the result does not hold, as we can see with the following example, where we take this group G to be the Frobenius group of order 20. Then this is a super solvable group, and it is a Fratini free subgroup. But again, the graph also in this case have 5 isolated vertices. So that means we are having the following condition here. That is, we want to find out under what condition order of phi g equal to 1 will imply and will be implied by that the graph is not having any isolated vertex. So means we were somewhere here. That is, for nilpotent groups it holds, but whereas this does not hold for the solvable groups and super solvable groups. So we are trying to find out for what exact condition will be having this if and only thing. Okay. Next, what we look into is that is when will the graph be having only isolated vertices. So if we see that if we take a finite cyclic P group, then all of its subgroups, they form a chain, and as a result no two of them will be adjacent to each other. So in that case the graph will be an edgeless graph. But what we see in the opposite direction is that if we take G to be a finite solvable group, then if the graph has no edges, then it has to be a cyclic P group. But the thing is that we cannot drop the condition of being solvable here, as because we have seen that if we take the group G to be PSL2 13, which is not a solvable group and not a cyclic P group as well, but then gamma G is having only isolated vertices. Okay. The next thing that we are interested is that, okay, if the graph is not connected, means the graph is having some isolated vertices. What if we ignore those isolated vertices? Will the graph be connected? Well, for that we have been able to prove the following result, that if we take a finite group G such that it has a maximal subgroup which is normal in G. Now here I would like to mention that this is not a maximal normal subgroup. A maximal normal subgroup means it's if we take the collection of all normal subgroups and we take a maximal element among them. It's not that. It's one of the maximal subgroup which is normal in G. So if the group G has such a subgroup, then we can show that if we ignore the isolated vertices from the graph gamma G, then the rest is a connected graph, and that component, the diameter of that component is less than or equal to 4. So I'll briefly discuss the first part of the proof. It's an easy one. So what we do, that is, we take H to be a maximal subgroup of G, which is normal in G. Now, two cases may occur. Either H is the only maximal subgroup in G. In that case, G will be a cyclic P group, and in that case, the graph is having only isolated vertex. So if that is not the case, in that case, we'll be having at least another maximal subgroup, say L of G. Now, obviously, H will be adjacent to L as H is normal in G, HL is a subgroup of G, and HL strictly contains H. And since H is a maximal subgroup, so HL is equal to G. So that means we have H is adjacent to L in the graph. And that also implies that H is not an isolated vertex in gamma G. So now what we want to show is that the non-isolated vertices, they are connected. That means they lie in a single component. Suppose this is not the case. Suppose we have H and L in the component C1 and there exists another component C2 which has at least one edge, say H dash, K dash. Now first we observe that both H dash and K dash cannot be contained in H, as because if H dash and K dash are contained in H, then H dash K dash will be contained in H, which is not equal to G. So therefore at least one of them, say H dash, is not contained in H. But again, by the previous argument, we can show that H dash is G. So that means H and H dash are adjacent in gamma G, which was not supposed to be the case, as because we have taken them from two separate components of the graph. So that means if we ignore the isolated vertex, the rest of the graph is a connected graph. And using certain tricks, we can also show that the diameter of the component is less than or equal to 4. I'm not going into the proof of that, but what I would like to mention is that that till now, the examples that we have seen, for them, the diameter of the component is either 1 or 2 or 3. We haven't got any group for which the component is having diameter 4. So either we can find out one such example, or it may be the case that this bound can be tightened up to 3. I think the second possibility is more likely to happen, but I'm not sure whether such a group exists also or not. Okay. So,
excuse me, could you please repeat what you said, please?
Yeah. So what we have seen is that if we take a group G, which has a maximal subgroup which is normal in G, then the connected component of that gamma G, its diameter is less than or equal to 4. But so far, the examples that we have got, there the diameter of the component is either 1 or 2 or 3. We haven't got any example for which the diameter of the component is 4. So that means there can be two cases. Either there does not exist any such group, or there exists. So if there exists such a group, then it's well and fine. If there does not exist, that means we need to tighten this bound up to 3. So I think the bound can be tightened. According to me, according to my intuition, that the bound should be less than or equal to 3, but I have not been able to prove that yet. Okay. So now certain results, follow from this. That is, let G be a finite solvable group. Then, as we know that a finite solvable group always has a maximal subgroup which is normal in G. So it is connected if we ignore the isolated parts. And for nilpotent groups, we have been, finite nilpotent groups, we have been able to show that the diameter of the component is less than or equal to 3. Now this bound is tight, as because we have got examples where the diameter is equal to 3. So that means if we want to find this example where the component is having diameter 4, we need to check examples of non-nilpotent groups G. As because for these nilpotent groups, this diameter is proved to be less than or equal to 3. Okay. Now, so what we have seen from this theorem, it allows us to define the following thing. That is a following graph gamma star G, which we get from gamma G by ignoring the isolated vertices from gamma G. We call it the deleted comaximal subgroup graph of G. Okay, then from the earlier results, it follows that if it is solvable, then gamma star G is connected. If it is nilpotent, then the diameter is less than equal to 3. And obviously, if it is connected, then gamma star G is gamma G, if and only if phi G is the identity subgroup. Okay, but we need to observe a few things here. That is, there exist groups like Sn, where n is greater than equal to 5, which are non-solvable groups. But as because these groups are having a maximal subgroup An, which is normal in Sn, so that means by our result we can say that gamma star Sn in all these cases they are connected graphs. That means there exist finite non-solvable groups also for which gamma star G is connected. In fact, we can say something more. If we take the groups An with n greater than equal to 5, we know that they are simple groups. So therefore, they does not have any maximal subgroup which is normal in n. But irrespective of that, gamma star A5 is a connected graph and it's having order 17. So that means the condition that we have proved here is that if G is a finite group where G has a maximal subgroup which is normal, condition is a sufficient condition for gamma star G to be connected, but this is not a necessary one. Okay. So therefore, the next question is, that is, can we find a non-solvable group? As because for solvable groups, there exist maximal subgroups which are normal in G. So therefore, the question is, does there exist finite non-solvable groups for which gamma star G is disconnected? Now, this is yet to be resolved. We don't have any answer to this, as because the examples that of non-solvable groups that we have taken so far, their gamma star G is connected. However, we haven't checked it for groups of large orders, but large means the sporadic groups and so on. But for small groups, say groups of order within less than equal to 1000, we cannot find such examples. Okay. Now, we'd like to characterize gamma G with respect to various graph properties of gamma G and group properties of G. So the first result that we have is that gamma G is a complete graph if and only if G is isomorphic to ZP cross ZQ or ZP square, where P and Q are primes, they may be same or may not be same also. So the proof, it goes like this, that is, if P and Q are not equal, then the group is like ZPQ, which has only two subgroups, one of order P and one of order Q, and they are adjacent. So we get the graph to be isomorphic to K2, the complete graph on two vertices. And if P is equal to Q, then we have the graph ZP cross ZP, the group ZP cross ZP, then it has exactly P plus 1 subgroups of order P. Suppose we call them H1, H2 up to HP plus 1. And if we take the product of any two, then it's equal to G. So that means we get a complete graph on P plus 1 vertices. So that's one part. And obviously, if we take G to be ZP square, then it has exactly one vertex. That's the ideal, the subgroup generated by P. So a single isolated vertex is K1. So we also consider that as a complete graph. For the other part, other direction, suppose we have gamma G to be a complete graph Kn. And suppose H1, H2, Hn be the vertices of that graph. Now, first observation is that none of this Hi is contained in some Hj. As because in that case, Hi and Hj cannot be adjacent, which contradicts the fact that gamma G is a complete graph. In the same way, Hi intersection Hj must be the identity subgroup. Otherwise, that will be a proper subgroup of G. So that itself will be a vertex of the graph, and which will not be adjacent to Hi and Hj. And in the same way, it can be, we can argue that all these His, they cannot have any non-trivial proper subgroups. So that means these His are prime order subgroups. So suppose we take these His to be of order Pis, where all these Pis are prime. Now again, as Hi is adjacent to Hj, so we must have order of G equal to order of Hi into order of Hj, as because their intersection is identity. So therefore its order becomes Pi into Pj. But this holds for all I and j. So that means all these Pis and Pjs must be same. So we call it say P. So therefore the order of the group is P square. And we know that then it can be either Zp square or Zp cross Zp. So that proves this theorem. That is, if it is a complete graph, then the group is one of this type of groups. In similar ways, it can be proved that the gamma G is a star graph if and only if G is a group of order PQ. Well, in this case, it may be a cyclic group, may not be a cyclic group of order PQ. And it can be proved, that is, it has an universal vertex if and only if it is either a non-cyclic abelian group of order P square or a group of order PQ. Note that the last theorem actually, the first two theorems are particular cases of the last one, because having a universal vertex contains both the case of having a complete graph as well as having a star graph. So in the same way, we can also try to characterize gamma star G. Now here we should note one thing, that if the graph is connected, then gamma star G is equal to gamma G. And if it is not, then they are not same. In this case, for the characterizations, we need an extra condition. That is, we are assuming the group to be a nilpotent group. Under that assumption, it can be shown that gamma star G is complete if either G is isomorphic to Zp cross Zp or Q8. Now for Q8, if you remember the graph, I will just go back to that once more. Yeah, the figure A. For Q8, if you ignore the isolated vertex, then we get a complete graph on 3 vertex. So therefore, in this case, gamma star G is a complete graph. Yeah. And in the same way, it can be shown that this gamma star G is a star if and only if either G is a group of order PQ or a cyclic group of order P to the power RQ, where R is greater than or equal to 2. And finally, when gamma star G will be having an universal vertex, then we have the following options. Now there are these 7 classes of groups, out of which some are abelian and some are non-abelian. But the only thing which is to be noted here is that for all these characterizations of gamma star G, we have taken G to be this nilpotent group. Now, why we are forced to take this? As because in this nilpotent group, we have a property that every maximal subgroup is normal in G. Now that we have used extensively in these proofs. However, for the similar characterizations of gamma G, we don't have to consider that. So this is one place where things may be improved. That is, for gamma star G, can we drop this condition of the group being nilpotent? Okay. Similarly, we have some other results of bipartiteness and Garth. Now, here it is important to note that the bipartiteness and Garth of gamma G and gamma star G, they are same. As because even if we ignore the isolated points, bipartiteness and Garth does not change. So again, in case of these nilpotent groups, it can be shown that gamma G is bipartite if and only if it's a cyclic group of order either p to the power a or p to the power a q power b. So in all other cases, it is not bipartite. And the Garth will be 4 if it is of the form zp power a q power b, and it is not having any cycle if it is either zpa or zpa into q, and in all other cases the Garth is 3. Okay, so far the things that we have done is that we have tried to prove some graph properties of gamma g. Now we'll look into the case that why these isolated vertices are important. For that, I recall one result from Akbari's paper that they have proved that a graph is connected if and only if it has no isolated vertex. Now the next question is it important to study the graphs with isolated vertex at all? That means if we have a group G such that gamma G has isolated vertex. So if we consider this gamma star G, can we find always a group H such that gamma star G is isomorphic to gamma H? Well, if we can find this, then we don't need to study the graphs, groups where gamma G is having isolated vertex, as because they can be reached by some other group also. But unfortunately, the answer is no. And if we take this example, say if we take G equal to ZP square Q square, then it can be shown that gamma G is nothing but the disjoint union of a square and 3 isolated points. So that means gamma star G is just a cycle of length 4. So now we are trying to find out a group H such that gamma H is C4. But again, we have proved that there cannot exist any finite group for which the comaximal subgroup graph will be isomorphic to C4. So that means not all graphs with isolated vertex can be reached using some connected graphs. Okay, now we come to the next part of the lecture, that is, so far we have taken a group and we have constructed a graph out of that. Now the next question is, given the graph of the group, can we get the group back uniquely from it? Well, for that, first we have this following observation. That is, if we take any group of order PQ, say ZPQ, then it is isomorphic to K2. That means gamma Z6, which is 2 into 3, or gamma Z15, which is 3 into 5. Both of them are having isomorphic graphs. However, the groups are not isomorphic. So that means the next question which arises from it is, under what condition, usually gamma G1 isomorphic to gamma G2 will not imply J1 is isomorphic to G2. But is there any condition under which this will hold? And even if we cannot get the group uniquely from gamma G, then can we get some information about the group from the graph? And finally, are there any class of groups for which we can uniquely get back the group? Well, to answer the following questions, we have some partial results, and this is an ongoing work. So the first result that we have proved is that if we take G to be a finite group and its independence number is less than equal to 8. So I'd like to mention what is the independence number of a graph. So a subset of vertex in a graph is said to be independent if we don't have any edge between any pair of them. And the cardinality of a maximum independent set is called the independence number of the graph. So if the independence number of the graph is less than equal to 8, then we can say that the group G is solvable. Now here we are getting some information about the group by seeing some graph property of the graph. So using this, we have proved, that is, if we have a group G whose graph is isomorphic to gamma Q8, then G has to be Q8. That means Q8 can be uniquely recovered from its graph. But it's not always the case. Say, for example, we have seen that if we take the graph of gamma A4, then we cannot uniquely get back A4. Either it is A4 or it is of the form Z p to the power 4q. Now here we have our if we know that the graph is gamma A4 and the group is not nilpotent, then we can say that it is A4. Or the group is not cyclic, then we can say that the group is A4. But just from the graph, we cannot uniquely get back the group. Okay. Then another result which Akbari and others proved is that they proved that if G is a finite nilpotent group, then the clique number is equal to the chromatic number of the graph, and which is equal to the number of maximal subgroups of that group. Now this automatically, forces us to think that whether this is also true for any induced subgraph of the graph. That means whether the graphs that we get here are perfect or not. Well, the answer for this is no, as because if we take Zn, where n has at least say 5 distinct prime factors, say p1, p2 up to p5, then we will see that we will always get a induced 5 cycle like this in the graph. So that means such graphs cannot be a perfect graph. In fact, it can be proved that in case of Zn, it is perfect if and only if the number of distinct prime factors of n is less than or equal to 4. But this is for Zn, not in general. So in general, the question is still open, that is under what conditions gamma G is a perfect graph. And the second question that we have put forward here is actually an observation. That is, we have observed that if we take one of the group to be a cyclic group, finite cyclic group, and the other group to be a nilpotent group, such that gamma G1 is isomorphic to gamma G2, then we have a hunch that G2 must also be a cyclic group and they have the same order type. That means same order type means suppose the order of G1 is p square q, then order of G2 must be square of one prime times another prime number. So their orders are of same type. So this is another observation that we think may be true, but we have not been able to prove that so far. So still there are many other questions which are left to be answered, like when the graph will be Eulerian. And for Zn also, we can, it will be slightly easy to check, to count the number of vertex, the number of isolated points, the number of leaves and so on, as because they plays, the number of leaves and all these things, they play an important role to check whether the graph is Eulerian or not or Hamiltonian or not. But we haven't checked that yet. We need to have more results for that. So these are my references. Thank you.
The forum is now open for discussion. Any questions or comments?
You have already said that the case of A4 and Z, what is the other case? Z.
The other thing is Z p to the power 4q.
P to the power 4q. Is it anything related to the observation you make it in the last point? One of them is cyclic, another one is nilpotent, and if the graphs are isomorphic?
No. What I was trying to say is that if we are given the graph of A4, then we cannot get back A4 uniquely, right? But if we have an additional information that the group is non-cyclic, then the Z p to the power 4q part is excluded. Then we can get back A4 uniquely. So with just the information about the graph, we cannot get it back uniquely. But if we have some extra information about the group, then maybe we can get back the group uniquely.
So I have a question, if I may.
Yes.
If so, you join H and K if the product HK is equal to G. Now, if you have an edge HK, if you replace H by any subgroup containing it, that's still also an edge, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you
So
if
you
any
can-
other subgroup which contains H, right?
Yes. So,
Yes.
Yeah.
So that suggests to me what happens if you look at the induced subgraph on the set of maximal subgroups, because every edge in the graph lifts up to an edge on the maximal subgroups.
Right.
Is there anything you can say about that?
I mean, in context of what?
Well, I don't know. I don't know what the good questions are. I would like to think about it, but
Yeah, I mean, the maximal subgroups are exactly important here. And in
Yes.
fact, Akbari and others are already seen that is the click number or the chromatic number is nothing but the number of maximal subgroups.
indeed,
But
indeed.
one thing which I have observed is that, I mean, it's a clean observation, that if H is contained in, say, K, then the number of neighbors of K, I mean, the set of neighbors of K is a proper superset of the number of, I mean, neighbors of H.
Yes. Yes. Okay. There are good things to think about here, I think.
Yeah.
Another observation.
Yes.
You see, in the case of zero divisor graphs, this condition Beck's conjecture gamma of G is equal to the chromatic number equal to this click number equal to the number of maximal ideals, annihilator. In the case, another observation regarding that is by Redmond, it is nothing but the domination number. Central sets, in the name of central sets, he has observed that is there, because this happens to be here, the similar observation, gamma and omega happen to be equal to the number of maximal subgroups.
Exactly,
can we have
exactly.
anything related to the domination in terms of this? That's my...
Yeah, you are absolutely correct. That is,
Yeah.
the domination number is bounded above by the number of maximal subgroups. But
Okay,
in most of the cases, it's very much smaller
Less
than that.
very much smaller. So, a very strong property is there apart from the maximality. Something else is there which takes care of the adjacency, isn't it?
Right.
Because Peter has asked about the maximal subgroups. That is why so in many cases it is less than. Okay.
Yeah.
Have you got anything equal to, any observation equal to?
Yeah, I have some result, but which I haven't put it in the slide. That is,
Okay, fine.
I mean, I have characterized the graphs for which the domination number is 1 or 2.
Okay, fine.
May I?
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, Josh.
Okay. This is somewhat related to co-maximal ideal graphs of rings.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
And there also the click number and chromatic number is equal to number of maximal ideals. So,
Right.
Yeah.
But in case of general groups, instead of I think Akbari and others proved for nilpotent groups. So in case of general groups, whether the result is same, whether the click number is same.
I'm not sure. It may not be true.
It may not be. Okay.
Because if the group is not nilpotent, then the maximal subgroup may not be normal.
Normal.
And if you multiply two non-normal subgroups, if they don't give the whole group itself, it may not be
Whole
a
group.
subgroup even.
Okay.
And another observation is what about the complement? Since you are asking about HK is not equal to G, my mind remains of the fact that it is equivalent to the complement. So one can look into the complement of this graph by putting the fact that HK is not equal to G.
Yeah. In fact, I was trying to look into that when I was trying to, see when the graph is perfect. In that case, we need to check whether we have any odd cycles in the complement graph also.
Yeah.
But it's not done yet.
The complement. In fact, in most of these situations, as far as I am concerned, the complement behaves with regard to the property of perfecta. Complement and the graph, they have the same behavior.
Yeah.
Have you some thoughts about the general case, infinite case, for example?
I
For
mean,
example, you know
Akbari and
that
others
when
have
the
done
graph
some works on
is
that.
connected,
Yeah, no,
or at least one edge.
yeah, can you please repeat your question once more?
I'm asking about a group which is infinite, and when you, for example, when the graph is connected in general.
Okay.
Not necessarily finite.
I understand, but I mean, the infinite cases, there are some, problems on infinite cases in Akbari's paper, but I am not very much sure about that. I mean, right now.
May I now request Professor Ambad Vijaykumar to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Aksuman Das, for the excellent talk. In fact, the weather conditions in this place as well as in Kerala is really bad. We are having very heavy rain. So it was almost on the point of cancelling this discussion, but somehow weather blessed us. I think situation is better in Bengal. I don't know. So
Yeah.
thank you very much for the excellent talk. June is full. All the 5 weeks we have speakers. But the most important day is going to be the 9th June, where we have asked the participants to share their views. So we want some information about their proposed plans latest by June 1st. I hope that at least 3-4 participants will volunteer to discuss some of their research problem and share with us. So with this, wish you have a nice weekend and hope everything will be fine soon. Thank you.
So with that, we come to the end of 9th day. The next session is on June. Professor Abdullahi will be talking on graphs defined by groups via nilpotency conditions. So see you all then. Do remember to send your abstracts before June 1st for the problem session on June 9th. Thank you all.